For more, let's bring in Professor Francis Onditi, Head of Department School of International Relations and Diplomacy at the Riara University in Nairobi. He joins us via Zoom from here in Nairobi. Professor Onditi, thank you for joining us. What's the significance of these attempts by Sudan's Rapid Support Forces and its allies to form a political charter with the formation of a breakaway government in focus?
Thank you for having me, Penina. I think Sudan, as we talk as a country, or it might be going through factionalization. These territorial enclaves that are being partitioned by the RSF, it's dangerous for peace process in many ways. But I think trust will be lost, especially amongst the countries or states that are involved in bringing peace or conducting mediation for this country, because it means that the group that is led by General Fattah will lose trust on them, on those who are mediating, particularly Kenya. But again, it also sends a very serious signal as to whether that decision was informed by the African Union, values and guidelines as put into the Constitutive Act of the African Union. So it's really a turning point for the Horn of Africa, Sudan. But I think there is a lot that need to be done in terms of AU invoking, its constitutive act and the values therein in terms of providing leadership, but also guidance, perhaps maybe by denouncing such kind of decisions that are likely to factionalize a territory or a country that is already in tatters and experiencing humanitarian catastrophe.
Now we know Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Sudan's army chief and head of the Transitional Sovereign Council, has rejected the RSF's move to form this parallel government. Is this conflict likely to get a political solution, or is the military path the only way?
I think it will take a bit longer before a lasting solution comes to the country, Sudan. But in short term, I think AU need to come very, very strongly condemning that decision by the RSF, led by General Dagalo. But secondly, the AU has the tools to sanction any factional group that would want to deviate from the values of its constitutive act, which is no country or no lead power can be taken through military action or through belligerent forces that are acting against the democratic will of the people. If you get to understand how RSF came into being, it's more or less like a belligerent group that may not really get into recognition of both the African Union and also the international community, particularly the UN Charter, because those acts are very, very clear on how a transition government should take place. But as we talk in the situation that Sudan gets into right now, I think it would be important, first of all, to denounce, as I said earlier, that decision by all the leadership of the region and international community. But to follow that would be reconstitution of the mediation actors or players. And I'm afraid that perhaps Kenya may not be part of the future of Sudan's peace process.
Allow me to jump in here, Professor Onditi. Allow me to jump in because you brought in that aspect of Kenya. And what we are now getting is analysts very perplexed by the Kenyan government's decision to allow one faction of the Sudan conflict to further its agenda here in Nairobi. What's the implication of this, and what possible repercussions can Kenya face?
Now, it will depend, again, how the African Union is perceiving, the decision that was taken by RSF, but also by the decision of the Kenyan government to host a rebel group that is purporting to establish a parallel government or a political charter. But as I said earlier, AU has some tools. One of the tools they can invoke is sanctions. They can actually put sanctions against RSF. But again, I foresee perhaps the Kenya or Kenyan government may not necessarily be involved in the mediation process. Perhaps the least the African Union may do is to reconstitute the mediation process for Sudan with exclusion of Kenya. And if Kenya was to be involved, then it will have to be compelled to denounce the RSF decision to establish, a parallel government in what they call the areas of territorial control, because that is dangerous not just to the peace process, but it portends bringing back the country into serious bloodshed, because then the transition of the government of unity they're talking about, it's in fact factionalization of the country into smaller territories, depending on who controls where. And we might see a bit of, a kind of manipulation of those groups. The group that is led by Digalo, the other one led by General Fatah, may experience manipulation of different actors and different countries. And that is not very good for the peace process, especially the mediation, a process that was initiated a while back by the African Union.
All right. Thank you very much for those insights, Professor Onditi. Professor Francis Onditi speaking to us there from Nairobi.